Hi, if you or your children are suffering because of your relationship with your ex partner, because it's stressed or strained, or maybe they're just not a nice person, this show is for you. Welcome to the High Conflict Co Parenting Podcast with Brooke Olson and Charlie Jewett. Enjoy another episode now.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the High Conflict Co-Parenting Podcast with Brooke Olson and Charlie Jewett. Today's episode is going to be episode number 8. We're cranking along here. So episode number 8 is on how parenting styles affect this conflict you're having in your relationship and kind of how you guys parent differently may show up. We talked a little bit about this, Brooke, but today we're going to devote an entire show to this because this really is kind of a big deal, an important piece that causes conflict in a lot of relationships, whether separated or not, right?
Yeah, thanks, Charlie, for picking this up again this week. I think that this is so important across so many boards because we've got parenting styles that affect the conflict between the parents that are separated, divorced, or going through the custody battles, but they also create conflict within stable relationships.
Mm-hmm.
You know, people come in with different relationship styles. Or parenting styles, they get into a lot of, you're doing this wrong, that's not the way to do it, and they really don't have a sense of really how to go about connecting and parenting through that. And ultimately what will happen oftentimes is that conflict will cause the next relationship to break up, and then we're back in a high conflict cycle with new set of kids and all of this stuff. You know, I've talked with you about this in classes along the way. So what I want to do this week is really pull this apart a little bit more, look at the parenting styles, what they are, what they produce, and how to really create and find a parenting style that is going to create win-win relationships and carry you through the relationship that you may be in, but also to insulate the children from the chaos because you've got such a strong parenting style that helps them just land in your home, take care of them in this parenting style that's going to help them move forward in their lives.
And like most of what we talk about, if you have a certain parenting style, you're not stuck there. I mean, our listeners can change their lives or say, "Oh gosh, I've been acting one way, or kind of using a certain style, and I don't think that's going to be what's best, and I want to make some changes and move to another style that may be better." This is something that's they're not stuck, right?
Absolutely not, and it's easily changed. The way that we parent typically is one of two ways. It's how we were parented or the opposite of how we were parented.
That makes sense.
And most people don't take the time to really delve in and educate themselves about what parenting is all about and how to create a more secure, a more win-win type of a democratic parenting style.
So this is it reminds me of a book a long time ago called Third Way Thinking, where we're like, it's either this or this, right? And there's like, well, there may be a third way. So it's not just I had good parents, I'm going to do it like that, or I hated the way I was raised, I'm going to do it like that. Really, it could be what is great parenting. Let's aim at that North Star, right?
Absolutely.
So what are the parenting styles? How many are there?
So there's typically 3 parenting styles that I want to talk about. The first one is autocratic. And the autocratic is your way, is not my way, and my way is the right way. The next one is authoritative. And the authoritative parenting is more, let's sit down, let's talk about this. Let's see how we can work this out. Let's look at what went wrong. Let's make some corrections. And we're not going to have punishment in this style, but we're going to have really good consequences that are known when things go wrong. So the child is in a choice place. It's like, I'm choosing to do this behavior knowing full well what will happen if this goes awry, if I get caught or whatever that is.
Yep.
And then there's the permissive style. And the permissive is a style in which there's very few boundaries. There's very few things that are are expected of the child in terms of emotional maturity, and they're kind of free reign. And there's a lot of people that look at this in terms of my child's my friend, and there's things that happen within that as well that don't go particularly well for the children.
No, I could see. I mean, I could see examples of all this in people that I know, but I could see permissive coming from not being a bad person necessarily, not like being lazy, but sort of not knowing, like, I don't know how to do this, right? So you just sort of don't do much. It's hard. I would think it's hard to be authoritative and have the conversations and be creative and come up with the natural consequences. So I think people could slip into permissive by doing nothing. Kind of, if you don't do anything in the river, you go down the river, right? You go with the current.
So let's stop at the top of it and kind of work our way through and talk a little bit about what the ramifications of these particular styles are. So in an autocratic parenting style, there are really strong boundaries, and you are going to adhere to these boundaries, and the expectation is that if you don't do what I tell you to do, there's going to be punishment. If you don't take my lead, there is going to be something harsh that happens. And this can be corporal punishment, this can be groundings, this can be things that get pulled out where the child doesn't get to express what happened there. Because one of the statements that was given to me when I was doing my training as a parenting educator was, a child that is acting out is a child that isn't getting a need met. So if the child doesn't feel like they can express, they shut down. And there's things that are going on in the background that may be hidden, may be sneaky, may be manipulative that the child's doing, rather than simply coming out and stating what their needs are or what they're missing, so the parent can engage in. And what happens over time, the autocratic parenting style works pretty well up until puberty, but it's fear-based.
Yeah.
And, the child's going to fall in line because they're afraid of that parent. They're afraid of the yelling. They're afraid of the corporal punishment. They're afraid of coming up against that big parent and their energy. So once they hit puberty, it's kind of like, okay, I'm going to do what I want to do, and I'm not going to be in relationship with you, and I'm going to hide in the background. So when we get into conversations about sex, alcohol, drugs, and there's not an opening for discussion, the child's going to go out and they're going to get in a car with somebody and that may have been drinking, or they have been drinking, and then bad things happen from here. Mm-hmm. Whereas an authoritative parent in that conversation would say something to the effect of, like, listen, this is what happens when you do things like, and I can't be there all the time. So I want you to do the right thing here. I want you to make the good choices here. And if for some reason you're out with your buds, you make a bad choice, you have something to drink, you smoke a bowl, whatever it is, pick up the phone and call me. Let me come get you. Let me keep you from destroying your life and the life of somebody else. And there's a conversation that's going back and forth there. So the child can go, okay, I'm at this party, I had a couple of beers, I'm going to relax. I'm going to go, you know what, I screwed up, I'm going to take some heat, but it's not going to be big heat. It's not going to be something that falls all over me and it rains all over me. I can just take my consequences, because I know what they are, and move forward from that, rather than I'm going to get beat, I'm going to get grounded for a month, I'm going to, fill in the blank.
Yeah.
So this helps the child really do it differently. And it's an important piece where, and again, with the passive or the permissive parenting, there's kind of like, I can just go about my world and I can do whatever I want. And there's not going to be any consequences. And if I get in trouble, oh well. And they have a real problem with authority. So when they come up against the real world and there's boundaries that happen, they're not able to deal with the authority that comes in naturally from the world.
Yeah, we would not have prepared them for the way the world really works with rules and consequences, right?
Exactly.
I mean, the police officer's not going to scream at you and beat you. They're going to calmly hand you a ticket or calmly take away your license if you break the rules, the driving rules or whatever.
Right.
So interesting, because the stereotype of a teenager, and you hear this all the time. If somebody asks how old your kids are, and you say, "Oh, they're whatever, they're this age," and you say teenage years, they're like, "Oh boy," right?
Mm-hmm.
The stereotype of the teenager may not necessarily reflect how human beings are during the teen years. It may reflect on how people who've been in an autocratic parenting system act when they hit puberty, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's more about the parents, not necessarily about how humans are when they're 13, 14, 15, 16. Because some families, I'm sure, and I know a bit about how your household was with your grandson. The authoritative parenting style, well, we talked about this before. There can't be conflict without two people anyway. So if the parent is staying out of the conflict, there's got to be less stress and craziness in the home when they're teens, right?
Right. And we're in conversation. Now, can you imagine being in a house, and I think you can, where there is one parent that has an autocratic parenting style,
Mm-hmm.
and there is another parent that has one of the other two? What happens with that?
I would think the kids would be totally confused, and there's now going to be conflict between the parents. Like, what am I doing here? Like, where the ground? It'd be like trying to walk while the ground is moving, or gravity keeps switching directions. Just like, golly, tell me what the rules are here, and then I'll figure it out.
Yeah, and kids adapt to whatever rules there are there. But if we've got an authoritative parent, and there's the other parent is autocratic, or the other parent is permissive, we've got a challenge, right?
Yeah.
But the authoritative parent is going to take a different way of dealing with the other parenting style. They're going to be more engaged with the other parent in terms of working it out, because this is their nature. This is what they do. This is what happens with the children. And rather than coming up against them, they're trying to solve the problem. They're trying to do something different.
Yeah.
Whereas if we're talking with an authoritarian parent or an autocratic parent, there's an argument. There's an argument across the board. There's an argument with the authoritative parent. There's an argument with the permissive parent, because this is more of that domination. We're going to do it my way. You don't know what you're doing kind of a process.
Yeah. Do these relate at all to the things we talked about, the bipolar, the narcissism, the histrionic? Does it relate at all? Or like, is someone who's borderline, do they tend to be always autocratic, or sometimes they're permissive or whatever?
Well, sometimes they're autocratic, sometimes they're permissive. I mean, there's and sometimes they're authoritative on some level, or some blending of a couple of these. I don't know that there's any direct correlation to it, because just to answer that quickly, sometimes that borderline personality is enmeshed with the children, and they're more permissive. There's more leniency, because they're trying to get the children to align with them on one end. And then on the other part of that authoritarian piece, from maybe more of the narcissistic end of that conversation, and I'm really painting with a broad brush here, so I want to be careful, but there's that more harsh way of, this is my way, this is the way we're going to do it, and there's an alignment with the children out of fear. So there can be a piece of that, but I want to be really careful with that, because people have a tendency to grab that one piece out of the conversation and go, because you're parenting this way, you're this way.
Right.
And that isn't necessarily true. I think a lot of healthy people have a parenting style in one of these other arenas only because they don't know, only because they don't have the education to it. And when we give them the education, they really will come around and they'll start to utilize it because they understand the value.
Yeah, we don't know what we don't know, right? I mean, this is something to become an authoritative. The words authoritative and authoritarian are so close. I'm glad you used autocratic because I think in the past you used the other two, and I was like, oh gosh, those are so similar, right?
Yeah, right.
And plus, autocratic just sounds like a robot, like my way or the highway. You broke the rules, I spank you. Authoritative. That's an awesome target. That's a great goal for all of us to sort of calmly to be in conversation. I mean, here's what's so crazy. Some autocratic parents are like so angry at their kids for doing exactly the same stuff we did as kids. Like part of life is going out and making mistakes and messing up. It's not like you're going to get through childhood without ever doing anything wrong, right? And you're like, Charlie, you're back to right and wrong.
That's fact. Well, no, we're going to make mistakes. And the difference between the autocratic and the authoritative parent in that conversation is you will not make mistakes. There is going to be something that happens here that you're really not going to like if you make that mistake. And I'm going to cloud up and rain all over you. And the authoritative parent says, you're going to make mistakes. This is how you grow. And when those mistakes are made, we're going to sit down and we're going to talk through it. What happened? How did it happen? Why did it happen? Why did you choose to go against the rules? What was in your mind in that moment? Yeah. Because that was a choice. And then to work backwards to how do we not do this again? Or since you did this, do you understand why that rule's in place? Right. It's for your safety. One of the things that I've really looked at and one of the things that really pops that autocratic piece out in me where I get really mad is when something happens that puts that child in danger. And that just brings up something that is really, the anger behind it is because I'm scared of that person. And I don't ever want that to happen. And there's a natural piece of getting up in and don't do that again and getting big. And you can see how that could be effective in one way. I mean, because you got so big and there's fear and maybe they won't do that again, but it doesn't engage the brain in a way of, oh, why are they mad? And why did this happen? And why is it not okay? And to go back and to look at how it happened.
It seems like it's effective in making soldiers, but maybe not happy, successful children who turn into happy, successful adults, right?
Right. And that is actually, the outcomes here, because they are less effective in society than those that are given a more authoritative approach.
I don't know if there's a correlation, but as you're talking about these two, autocratic and authoritative, particularly those two, I'm reminded of a class I took where just this was new information for me. I knew these two words. I knew the words guilt and shame. But somebody talked about how they applied in parenting, the difference between guilt and shame. Like if a child breaks a rule or does something that was dangerous or whatever, they probably should feel some level of guilt, and that's fairly healthy, kind of a gift of our conscience. But shame is different. So the way they explained it was guilt is I've done something wrong, or if you're telling somebody something, you did something wrong versus you are wrong or you are bad, right? So it's not I am a bad person. It's like I made a bad choice. Is there some relationship there with does the autocratic parenting sort of sounds like it could be shaming where the authoritative is more?
Yeah, it's much more shaming.
Guilt's not bad. Like shame's pretty damaging, but the guilt part, like, yeah, you're supposed to feel like that. That's your brain is doing you a favor. You know what I mean? If you feel bad about whatever, underage drinking and then driving with somebody who was drinking and all that jazz.
Right. And I think the word that I would search for is in that guilt conversation would be more of remorse.
Mm-hmm.
I hurt somebody, or I caused some pain, or there was something that happened that it's not that narcissistic shame of, oh, I got caught and my life got changed because I got caught and I have consequences to pay because I got caught, but more of the remorse of I caused somebody else pain, and I caused somebody else to feel discomfort or whatever that piece was. So there's a real difference in that from that conversation, I think.
And that may not be there. I mean, your child could have broken a rule and gone out and partied and done a bunch of cocaine or whatever and been like, it was awesome, right? They're not feeling like they hurt anybody or they just broke a rule. They just did something that's against the household rules. It doesn't necessarily feel like they're having remorse at the moment, right?
Right, but we can take that conversation with them and we can roll back and have a broader conversation of what that created.
Mm-hmm.
So I got some cocaine, I got high, but where did that cocaine come from?
Right.
And what was the cost of that to the people who created it, to the people that smuggled it, to the people that distributed it? What are the cartels? What are these other things that are taking place on a more human level?
Yeah.
And then even having a conversation about the addiction that comes out of it.
I see.
Maybe not for you on one time, but on a bigger picture. And to maybe sit down and have a conversation about what addiction looks like, right?
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. So if you're taking this one seemingly small action and tying it to, well, really what you did is you just contributed to the mission of, of sex slaves and, whatever the whole cocaine trade is tied to, murder, bloody murders and extortion and things like that. And frankly, you played Russian roulette and didn't die because some batches of cocaine come mixed with things that kill people.
Right.
So yeah, it felt great, but the next one might kill you.
So it means that parenting from an authoritative standpoint is not a passive process. It's I am engaged in every aspect of the conversations like this that have to take place, right?
Yeah. Yeah, we don't want to be shying away from conversations about drugs and sex and date rape and all kinds of stuff like this. That's necessary to be having those conversations. And we don't want to, I would think the autocratic method would be really limiting in parenting, because what are we going to tell? Because you will not date, you will not be sexually active until you're blah, blah, whatever, 18, 21 or whatever. And then they go through puberty and everything inside of them is screaming. Wouldn't it be a lot healthier to be like, I'm so psyched for you, like that internally you're interested in sex, and naturally, like puberty's kind of on purpose, you know what I mean, for procreation and stuff like that. But culturally and the way it works here, it's not super convenient, you know what I mean, to like have a child at 13 or 14. So let's try to partner together and at least, wait till you're off to college, or let me help you make smart decisions about this. And that's my concern with you having sex. Not like don't want you to be sexual. I just want you to end up with a surprise kid and miss out on some of the things that could be great,
And again, the autocratic really creates a defiance in the child.
Yeah.
And the authoritative creates relationship.
There is something in us, right? I know that the Christian church has a version of this, why they say it's there, but there is something inside of us that if you really spell it out and say, don't do X, Y, Z, don't eat the apples from that tree or the fruit from that tree, or don't do whatever, that something inside us is like, well, I'm kind of more interested in that now. Why are they saying not to do that?
Yeah.
A little rebellion in there somewhere.
I think so.
Don't think about pink elephants, Brooke. Do not think about pink elephants right now, whatever you do. Which could be this is interesting. It could just be the stuff we've talked about, what you focus on, what has your attention, you tend to head that direction, right? I've heard Tony Robbins talk about his flight training to get his pilot's license. And they were talking about, even if you are going to, how did he teach it? It was something like, don't look at the thing that you're afraid you're going to crash into, or something like that. Like, or it might even have been like driving, not flying, but it was race car driving, right? Mm-hmm. And they were like, if you get out of control, do not look at the wall. He's like, how do I not look at the wall, right? But the thing is, and you notice that in car accidents, how many people drive directly into the telephone pole when there was a bunch of other options 6 feet either way, right?
Right.
Because what you're looking at, and I know it from hockey, skating, gymnastics, where you look with your eyes or your head, your body's going to go. So when you're doing front flips and back flips, you have to spot something on the wall, not your feet, or else you're going to fall forward, right? same kind of an idea. Through parenting, you could actually just draw your kids' attention to only the things you don't want them to do if you're autocratic.
Yeah. And there's this same conversation about conflict, which is the focus of what this podcast is about. And where we put our attention is where we go. So if we're putting our attention on our past, where the conflict lies, if we're putting on what this person has done or all of those things, we stay in that state of mind. And we keep creating that because we keep going back to that with every conversation that we have or every interaction that we have. If we take our attention and we put it into the future, if we put it into that place that we're going, that's what we begin to create. You know, this is again what you and I were talking about earlier before the podcast, where the nature of existence is that of our own creation. We touched on this a little bit with 100% responsibility. This is just a continuation of that conversation on some level. What we direct ourselves towards is what we create. So if our vision is on the future and how we are going about that, that is literally what we're creating. If our vision is on the conflict and what's happened to us, that's literally what we're creating. So we have to start this separation, which leads me into the next piece that I really want to spend some time with here today before we run out of time. And this is a parenting piece that I think if people got and they did nothing more than this, it would take their parenting to a totally different level.
Ooh, bring it.
And that's using this idea of positive anticipation. In my book, I call them GEOs, or genuine expectation opportunities. And these are event creating things that we're going to do moving forward with our children that creates a timeline for them. It creates this look that we've got pictures of us in the past doing things. We've got this planning that we're doing in the moment, and the planning that we're doing is for our future. So they can see this time of being together, past, present, and future all of the time. And what we've talked about in terms of attachment style is trying to create this secure attachment where the kids know that we are there. We've got their back, and we're teaching them how to be in the world with these events.
Yeah.
So
Fairly important thing to do, right? Kind of definition of parenting.
Maybe the only thing to do here. I mean, again, what we're trying to do is give our children the skills to be in the world and how to do that. So I'm going to walk through these. I'm going to walk through these relatively quickly. But I break these down into 3 different styles. I break these down into short-term, mid-term, and long-term events. And what we're doing through these events is we're bringing the children into the conversation. What are we going to create? How are we going to create it? And when are we going to do it? So with a short-term event, we're looking at something that is 6 to 8 weeks out. And, you know, if we've got an every other weekend or an every other week kind of a parenting piece, we've got time to get there and then start to execute.
And what was your time frame you said on that? 6 to
8 weeks.
6 to 8 weeks. That is pretty short term.
Right. And this is going to be something that is something super easy. This might be a day event out. I like to really get out into nature. I think that nature is, it creates a place in our nervous system that is calm, that there isn't any distractions out there. We're not in video games. We're not at a theme park. We're not distracted from one another. We're in relationship, and we've got opportunities to do things. So for the sake of this conversation, that's where I'm going to go.
Well, the luxury movie theater I take them to has plants. Does that count?
No.
It's nature. Okay, got you. Get them out in the woods, hiking, right? hiking, fishing, boating,
all of these things.
beach volleyball, just the beach in general.
Yeah, outside. And, these are the pieces that, as we're talking through this, this is going to lead us into our next podcast for next week, but this is kind of the setup in here to really bring them in. So for the sake of being outside and this conversation, I'm going to say that we're going to sit down with the kids and we're going to talk about all these different places that we can go. Now, Charlie, you and I are in San Diego. We're not in the place where things turn over and it gets cold and stuff in the winter or gets super hot in the summer. I mean, we got an opportunity to spend outside all of the time. But even where it's cold, there's sledding and there's skiing and there's ice fishing and there's other things that can be done in here. So for you guys that aren't here in God's country and in San Diego, get out and look at the possibilities here. But we're going to talk about these in terms of sunny San Diego for a moment.
And I'll tell you, sledding and ice hockey, I grew up on the East Coast. Sledding and ice hockey were two of my favorite things to do. I didn't get to do ice fishing, but this is certainly not limited to sunny places, but we can speak just from experience about our context here, right?
Right. And burr is all I have to say. So, if we're going to do a day trip, we've got a lot of different things that we can do. We can go to a regional park, we can go to the beach, we can go to the mountains, we can go to the desert, and we're going to sit down with the kids and we're just going to punt this around and see what we would like to do on this particular weekend for the day. This is going to be a day trip. And then we're going to organize it, but we're going to organize it in a way where we've got like a vision board. The vision board is a critical piece for this conversation. And what goes up on the vision board is where we're going, the logistics of what we're going to be doing. We may have 3 things working at a time, so we may have a couple or 3 notebooks or clipboards hanging off of this. So we've got everything that we need on it to get there. And what's going to go on that is, what do we need? So we're going to say we're going to go to a regional park out here like Jennings or something like that. And we've got a lot of different opportunities to go hiking, go swimming, go fishing, play ball, throw a frisbee, just picnic and have a barbecue, whatever those things are. But this is always a part of the conversation of what would that look like if we did this? Because what the brain thinks about, the brain creates. And in every moment of these conversations that we're having with our children, we are creating a moment of connection. We are creating a moment of relationship that may happen or it may not. But the fact that we're having the conversation, it happened. So they can envision us in a rowboat on the lake. They can envision us standing on the lakeside and fishing. They can envision us playing ball or taking a hike or whatever that is. And that is a creation in that moment of the relationship between the parent and the child. And what we're also doing in these, once we land on what we're going to do, we start to initiate all of the things that need to happen. And this is planning. Each one of these is going to have a budget. We're not going to go over budget. We're going to track money. And we're giving the children through this process the jobs to do that are in this that are going to give them the skills they need as an adult.
Okay. So I've got a whiteboard hanging in my dining room. That should help, right?
Right.
Okay. So the visualizing is such an important piece, and I've seen the research on it. I don't find it super easy. I haven't built the skill yet to sit down and take myself there and envision it, but I've seen the research, what they've done with Olympic athletes and, astronauts and all these kinds of people. I actually think there was, a one study where they took 3 groups. One of them, they had them shoot free throws. The other one, they had them visualize shooting free throws. And the other group, they had, I think, do nothing. And at the end, they did the real free throw competition. And the group that only did visualization won or whatever. You know what I mean?
Right.
Visualizing is such an important piece. And I'll say for my life, it feels kind of difficult to learn or an awkward skill. So as much as we can help the children to do it when they don't even know, that's what we're doing. But just, I like the idea of what you said. What would it look like if we were to go, go fishing? Or what would it look like if we were to go here? Because in their heads, they're going to go there, right?
It's not just in their heads, it's in their nervous system as a general piece. I mean, if you sit down, you just brought it up. If you just sit there and you imagine shooting free throws, right?
Yeah.
You can actually feel your muscle groups fire.
Yeah.
You can feel them going through that process of raising your arms up and flipping your wrist and putting backspin on the ball and seeing it go into the hoop, right?
Yeah.
So there's a physicality to it that's created within it. It is an event in and of itself, and it creates, I think, what you're talking about here on some level. It creates confidence in what you're trying to create, whatever it is. I can do this. I've seen this. I've done it. I've watched the YouTube video. I've sat and I've closed my eyes and I've gone through that process, and swoosh, there it is.
Well, that would apply to everything that we're teaching. Like if you're not good at something, you're not good at disengaging, you tend to overreact. When you get a text, sit down somewhere comfortable, close your eyes and picture the worst thing your ex could write. Just look at the phone in your head and see these horrible words coming through, and then picture yourself doing absolutely nothing. Put the phone down, go get a drink, turn on a show, go out in nature, whatever. Picture yourself doing absolutely nothing until 24 hours later, and then ignoring it and responding to the one piece of it. I'll be there tomorrow to pick them up or whatever. Or
that's a great statement. That's a great statement.
Everything we're saying, right? Even this, like I haven't done this. How am I going to get good? The body goes where the brain has already been. How am I going to get good at creating positive anticipation and talking about short-term, mid-term, long-term? Sit down, picture myself at the whiteboard, picture myself, the kids looking at me, smiling, asking them, guys, what would it be like if we did do?
It's a brain hack, isn't it? It's a nervous system hack.
That's there's a big theme in my life right now after so much time spent with just nothing in my life, like no religious beliefs at all and no guidance, basically one parent, and then 2 decades of only one sort of very dogmatic religion. My world right now is about figuring out how this universe actually works. And a lot of it seems to be kind of brain hacks and breaking lazy habits. Like one guy just said recently, there's I don't remember what his number was, but there's 60 million inputs a day or some freakishly high number. We have a lot of inputs, a lot of stuff you can think about, like stuff that comes into your body throughout the day or your eyes, ears, whatever, senses. And the brain is efficient. So it basically just ignores all of them except the ones related to your goals. Well, most people's goals are just survival, right? So it just ignores all the ones except for the ones that help you survive. So you're not accomplishing anything.
And here we're really going out of survival and just going into flourishing on every level.
Yeah, when you said we're in charge of our own evolution, and some of the guys in the sort of law of attraction world and the neuroscience or whatever kind of say, no, we're actually creating this universe. We're actually, the things you think about and think about, you're actually going to bring about eventually in some time frame. And the universe is a catalog, and place your orders and all that kind of stuff. To some degree, even if none of it's true the way we think it's true, it's just whatever you focus on is you tend to think about and feel it, right?
Right.
Okay, great.
But it takes action.
It does take action.
You have to move from thought into action.
Right.
That's where it becomes manifest. I mean, you can think about it all day long, you can play with it all day long, but you have to take the steps.
Yeah.
So the short-term piece, again, it's a quick one. We're going to come together. We're going to talk about it. We're going to plan it out. We're going to execute it. We're going to clean it up, and everybody gets to have a job. Everybody gets to cook. Everybody gets to clean. Everybody gets to do some activity at some point. And there may be a place where, especially if we've got smaller kids and we've never done this stuff, we might set it up in the backyard and do a walkthrough, do a play right there in our own backyard someday and look at what it wants to be. So now I want to move to the midterm conversation.
Before you do that, let me jump in here, because this is really ideal for parenting plans that are week on, week off, or every other weekend, and where there's a big break in between, right?
Right.
Because positive anticipation, we haven't talked about this part of it too much. Positive anticipation wouldn't it be incredibly healthy and wonderful, particularly if you have the other side bad mouthing you, if your kids are having thoughts of you when you're not there, and they cannot wait to go see you again or do this thing that you guys have talked about. Well, okay, so someone like me, who right now I'm on every other weekend, and then some Wednesdays in between, but sometimes I have to miss them because I travel for a living. So sometimes it's, it can go almost 10 days or 2 weeks. This is really important. I mean, to be sitting down and talking about, guys, okay, our weekend's coming to an end. Let's talk about the next time you're here 2 weeks from now, right?
Right.
What do you want to do? How do you want to get out into the world? What do you want to experience? Same thing we did? Something, you want to repeat something, or you want to do something totally new? That should be really, I think, really important, healthy stuff.
It's incredibly important. And we're going to have a podcast here in the near future on alienation, but I'm going to step in here and just tag it for a quick moment. Alienation only happens when there's not connection and there's a consistent break of relationship with a parent. And what this does is it bridges that gap when they're away. So the other parent may be bad mouthing, the other parent may be trying to put bad thoughts into the child's head. This isn't safe. This isn't whatever it is. And when the child comes back to this parent and they're working on these geos, they're in the middle of this positive anticipation conversation, that dissent of the other parent, that trying to come in and do the brainwashing that happens with alienation, doesn't get whole because it's incongruent. The child has a totally different experience than what this parent is throwing out. So, over time, especially if that hasn't had an opportunity to really take hold, this can begin to bridge that. So if a child is with the parent and they're being bad mouthed and they're going through all this stuff, this conversation about this next positive event is sitting in the back of this child's mind going, this doesn't match up. I'm over there. It's safe. I'm having conversations. We're working on relationship, because if I do something wrong, I don't get blown up like I do here. And it goes on and on. So we're creating a different vision of what both parents have to say about you, and in this vein, it's incongruent. They don't go towards that alienation piece when we're doing stuff like that.
Well, what I know about the bad-mouthed parent, the one on the receiving end of all the bad-mouthing and the kids being upset at them as far as parental alienation, is that these people feel completely out of control, like that there's just nothing that can be done. Well, this sounds like a vaccine to me.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to push here for a moment. You've done this, Charlie, right?
Yeah, with my kids.
You've been through my program. You've used these geos. You've played with this piece.
Yeah.
And what was your experience at the end of it? Because you have been in a process where somebody was trying to alienate you.
Well, I mean, not just my experience, but some of the other things you've been taught in class that could be really useful. It's like each of these kids are individual and something really floats their boat, right? Mm-hmm. And you're the one who said to me, sometimes it's not that big a deal if one of the children doesn't want to come, or divide and conquer, or purposefully have alone time. Whatever kid you have, this is not a bad thing to learn, by the way, if you ever want to be in a romantic relationship too, because we're just talking about basic relationships. Find out what someone absolutely loves, what completely floats their boat, and provide a lot of it. And the positive anticipation piece of it, to me, sounds like we're saying, don't just provide it. Like, I don't like surprises very much because I don't get the anticipation of knowing it's coming, which is so important to me. If I have a birthday party coming up, I want to think about it for 3 months and be like, oh my gosh, I can't wait. I don't want to I want to walk in the door and have people scream surprise, right?
Pop out of nowhere for sure.
And we're talking about creating a life of, we're purposefully providing things we know they love and float their boat individually, right? Mm-hmm. They love horses. They love this. My son, loves Halloween, and at one point loved snake hunting, and basically all things that are hard for me to do, right? Snake hunting and long hikes and setting up haunted houses. But learn your kids, plan to provide wonderful experiences for them. But now we're talking about make them a part of that plan, so that they're feeling a part of it. They're learning how to do it. They're preparing for it. But then it's inside their head. They're smelling the food. The smell, like you go by a Cinnabon and you smell it down the hall, right? In the mall.
Yep.
And they do that on purpose. They put it away from the food court because they don't want it mixed with any other smells. They want you to smell it and be like, I want that. And whether Cinnabon's good for you or not, that mechanism
Go
of
searching it out.
enjoying it before it's there.
Right.
We're hijacking that and using it for good, and just being like, smell what this trip is going to smell like the next time we're together. And then when they're in the other home and someone says, oh, your dad is selfish and only thinks about himself, and the kid's like, oh my gosh, but I smell cinnamon, and all he talked about was what I like and what we're going to do, and I okay, whatever you think, but they just might not. It might vaccinate them. That's the word that keeps coming. It might protect them a bit against some of that disease.
Right. And think about it. All of the parents that are listening to this podcast, think about what it would have been like had your parents ask you about what you would like to do on a vacation, where you would like to go, or even if you had one that was planned, what you could have put into that would have made it better. And you can do this exercise by yourselves and just kind of dream about what that would have looked like if you'd have gone to the lake and you were able to take a friend with you and you were able to go out on a boat and go fishing, or whatever it was that you didn't get to do and you weren't asked about. Because we are all human beings, whether we're 2 or 22 or 92. We want to be asked what we want. And when we are, we're included into the tribe, we're included into the decision, and that decision becomes so much more relational and rich.
Have I told you my childhood story? Like one of the best memories ever from the little time I had with my dad?
No, you haven't.
And I'm not coming from a place where I'm like, where I feel a lot of the negatives. I don't have a lot in my life where I'm like, oh my gosh, this guy he always told me what we were doing. He never included, I don't have any of the negative side of it, right? I just have an incredible standout memory from very young. I don't know if I have any other memories from this year, but I saw my dad every other weekend, and it was like a 2.5 hour drive to New Jersey from Pennsylvania. Every other weekend, never in between, basically, right? And I just remember showing up one time for my weekend, and he's like, what do you want to do, bud? And I said, I want to go to Great Adventure, which is the Six Flags in New Jersey. And he's like, let's do it. And I don't know how long the drive. I just remember, I don't remember Great Adventure. Honestly, I can't picture the park. I don't remember anything except the conversation where he said, what do you want to do? And the fact that we went, which is telling, right? Because something, and you're defining it now, but something inside of me felt great. You know what I mean? And it's probably people do want to participate, or they want to be asked, right? Kind of what would you be interested in? And they, as you're growing up, you want to be included and feel like you're a big boy and like you're part of it and you're intelligent and needed and all that kind of stuff. I think it's a memory for me because my dad made me feel amazing.
It does. It's incredibly powerful. It's incredibly powerful. What do you want? What would you like to do? Let me hear what your wants are. It's such an open door.
We've had some interesting experiences with what really equivalent to my stepkids, though I'm not married to my girlfriend, in asking them what they want. And they're not allowed to think like that, so they can't answer. You know what I mean? They don't have that freedom in most of their life. They're just told, stay home and do nothing because the world is dangerous or whatever it is. And that's probably an exaggeration. I mean, obviously they go out, but we've actually seen it's difficult for them to tell us what they want, or one of them always bows down to what the other wants and can't stand up for themselves. You know what I mean? There's some weird stuff going on there where they obviously, that's not a comfortable thing that they've had a lot in their life and been used to in a healthy way.
But they're learning it from you guys, and that's important.
They're getting better. Yeah, it's most recently. I mean, I was just talking with my girlfriend. I was like, golly, man, this last time they just seemed free and happy, just comfortable and happy. So what's midterm? This was short. We like the short term. We talked about it for 30 minutes or whatever.
So the midterm is just really kind of a piggyback on that, and it can be the same kind of a thing, or it can be something totally different. But for the sake of this conversation, we're just going to run into something similar. And what I like to bring into this conversation, because it's so target rich, is the camping idea. Again, we're staying with outdoors. We're staying with doing things outside. So again, we're all going to sit down, whether we've got one child with us or we've got 6 children with us. We're going to sit down with them and we're going to build this next component. And if we want to use camping as the focus for this conversation, what we're going to do is we've got to decide where we're going to go camping. Are we going to go to the mountains? Are we going to go to the beach? Are we going to go to the desert? Where are we going to go? And we talk about the possibilities with each one of those. And then once we decide on one, if somebody else wants to do something different, we're going to take that something different, we're going to catalog it, and we're going to come back to it, because everybody in the family gets to get their needs met here. And this isn't the only time it's going to happen. So if we're going to go to the mountains and they wanted to go to the beach, we're going to have a conversation about the beach next time around, and we're going to plan a trip around the beach.
Mm-hmm.
So unless they change their mind because they like the mountains so much. But I mean, that is something that we're going to catalog and come back to. So let's say that we've decided we're going to go to the mountains. We have to decide what we're going to do in the mountains. Are we going to rent a cabin? Well, we've got a budget here, so maybe not. We're going to dry camp, or we're going to find a campground that is going to suit our needs. And what does that look like? What are our needs? Do we want to go to some place where there's a lake where we can go fishing? Do we want to go camping? Do we want to go fishing on a stream? What does this look like? And to play it all out, to look at what those opportunities are. There may be a couple of them involved in it. You know, we can fish by the shore. We can fish from a boat. We can stream fish. We can lake fish. We can hike. What is it? And then we build that piece out. So what we're going to do is we're going to find a campground. Then we're going to look at the sites in the campground that we want to be close to the showers, or do we want to be close to the lake? And we're going to have conversations about the pluses and minuses of all of that. And we're going to create, you know, that place. And then somebody's got to place the order for the campsite. So we're going to give the credit card to one of the kids. Everybody brace on that. And we're going to have them go online with the credit card, or they're going to pick up the phone with the credit card, and they're going to book it. Because these are skills that everybody needs, right? These are, you know, we're teaching them how to do what it is that needs to be done. And then we're going to backtrack a little bit and look at everything and say, well, what do we need for this? I mean, we need tents, we need sleeping bags, we need mattresses, we need a stove, we need all of these things that are going to go. We may need fishing gear that we used to have, and the other parents got it at their house, and no, we're not going to ask them for it because we don't want to engage with them. This is our world, this is our stuff, and we don't want to have an argument. So now we've got to start to gather. On what I didn't say about the midterms is this is a little further out. This is more like, you know, 10 weeks to maybe 14 weeks out that, you know, this next piece is coming in. So we've got time to plan it. We've got lots of time to put the things together that we need. And then we've got to look at where we're going to go to get this, because we've got to meet the budget or stay under the budget. So, you know, we're going to look at thrift stores, we're going to look at Craigslist, we're going to look at the different places online that might have it. But there's one place that I really like to look when we're looking at things like this, and that is to go to garage sales. You know, garage sales becomes this scavenger hunt of an event in and of its own. We've got this list of stuff. We've got to plan where the garage sales are. We've got to map it out. We've got to see what they've got. And then, you know, everybody piles on the car on a Saturday morning at the crack of stupid. We stop and get some donuts and some juice or whatever it is. And then we're off on the scavenger hunt. And especially for younger kids, this is a ton of fun. And, you know, they're gathering the pieces. And through every moment of this, they are thinking about where we're going, what we're doing, what this little piece that we're picking up at the garage sale is, and what it's going to look like when we, you know, bait the hook and throw it in the water, or we're pitching the tent, and we're going through all of these things. It is hacking the brain system and creating secure attachment every time we touch this.
Yeah.
And the secure attachment is the place that gets in the way of anxious living. And anxiety is the piece that creates these other attachment styles that we've talked about that get in the way of relationships. So what we're doing here through all of this is we're parenting, we're teaching what it's like to do things in the world, we're giving them skills, and ultimately, we're breaking the generational cycles of conflict. Because through every one of these, we are problem solving. And problem solving is the key to staying out of conflict.
Yeah. That's awesome. Well, how long is long term? I know we're making the podcast kind of long here, so we'll wrap it up. How long is the long term if this is 10 to 14 weeks?
The long term is 6 months to a year. This is your big vacation. This is the place where you really save, you put the pieces together, and you keep planning. And if you look at the timeline here that we're talking about, 6 to 8 weeks, 10 to 14 weeks, 6 months to a year, if you're doing this, you're always doing something with the children. You're always doing one of these events with them, or you're planning it with them. And that means you're always engaged with them. And that's the important part of this parenting conversation that we've been having today.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, I can see how I can use it right away, and I'm excited to apply some of this. What do you want to say in closing, or what's how could somebody dip their toe into this world, or the next time they have their kids, kind of do something?
Well, before you see your kids next time, go get a vision board, get a big whiteboard, hang it up, and then start the conversation with them. Just start the conversation. And as you start the conversation, start to put pictures up on the board, start to plan this out, create a timeline. And this is something to, bring down every single time you see your children, bring it down, talk about it, and just get started. I will have parents that do this out of my classes. I'll have the conversation one week and they'll start it the next week. And the stories that they tell are amazing.
Yeah, I can see that. I would think an easy way to start would just be put the board up, right?
Yep.
And say, guys, I love having fun with you. I think it's incredible. What are some things that we've done before that you'd like to repeat? You want to do again? And then what are some things we've never done that you think would be fun, for us to do in our time together? And then just let them brainstorm.
Exactly.
I mean, they're gonna relive some of their best memories. That's good.
Mm-hmm.
And be excited about doing them again. And they're gonna think about their dreams and their goals and some bucket list kind of stuff with you. They're gonna dream with you about a desired future and come up with great ideas that maybe you wouldn't even have thought of. I remember, again, Tony Robbins taking one of his sons to Toys R Us or whatever, saying you can have anything in the store. And of course, he's thinking he's going to pick like a giant computer or a huge robot or something like that. And his son went over and found a rake. And he just wanted to go home and rake leaves with his dad. How awesome is that? Like, don't think for your kids what they want. They may not want to spend $60 and go to the movie. They may want to go walk around a lake and throw rocks,
Yep.
So I like that idea. Awesome. Okay. Anything else you want to say before we wrap up?
Let's wrap it up. It's been a long one.
Yeah. All right, folks. Hopefully the content was worth it. We give you a lot of time today. This is parenting styles and how they affect conflict in relationships. You're not going to change your spouse or ex-spouse or ex-partner, whatever it is, but you can change yourself. If your parenting style needs a few tweaks to move sort of towards that authoritative, that like super healthy authoritative, just re-listen to the show, keep listening, get in touch with Brooke. Brooke, how do you want people to reach you if they've got a question about the show or about how you could help them, speed up their parenting styles or tweak? How can they reach you?
Reach out, email brooke@highconflict.net. That's my personal email. You're welcome to use it. If you wanted to give me a call and leave a message, try to book some time with me or what have you, you can call my business line at 760-751-4398. Look forward to hearing from you guys.
And I can tell you guys from experience, I've spent a lot of time around Brooke. He's an intelligent, amazing, helpful person, and he does not bite. We'll see you guys next Friday. Bye-bye. Brooke, people don't have to wait until Friday mornings to get more content. If this is something that's helpful for them, right? This isn't the first time you've broadcast anything or recorded anything or put anything out there in the world. What are the other ways people can get the help more aggressively or speed up their recovery process? What materials are available for people right now?
Well, I've written a book called The Black Hole of High Conflict, and it's available on Amazon and Kindle.
Great.
And everything that we're talking about is really compressed and put into there. So this is a really good starter place to get in and get your mind working and to see what these concepts are about and how to start to apply them. The other place that I think that is valuable is to go to our website and look at some of the blog articles that I've written. Those are available there as well. If they go into some of these other arenas, and that's at www.highconflict.net. So the book, the website are also really good places to get the material. And also we have classes. We have high conflict diversion program classes that you can get into and get some one-on-one help with this as well.
And you know me, I'm aggressive. Whatever I want to become good at or learn, I find someone who's good at it and pay them and hire them and shorten my learning curve. What if somebody just wants your help? Somebody says, Brooke has this information. He's good at something I'm not good at yet, and I want to work with him. Do you have any type of coaching or consultations or anything like that?
Absolutely, I do. I do one-on-one coaching for custody cases. I help people get ready for family court services. If you've got that in your community, I work with attorneys and clients to help them with managing and strategically setting them up to have more successful cases as well.
And how do they reach out? You want them to just go to the website or email or phone, or what's the best way for them to reach out, raise their hand, and say, I need some help?
They can email me. My direct email is brooke@highconflict.net. That's BROOK at highconflict, HIGH, conflict.net.
Perfect. That's everything everybody would need to get some help, right?
Absolutely.
Thank you, Brooke.
Thank you, Charlie.